No, this movie's from hell. You serious? Hey everybody, welcome back to Chandler Burton Movies and Video Games. I hope y'all are doing well today. Today on the channel, we are going to be talking about the brand new film, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This, of course, is going to be a non-spoiler review. I'm going to give you some pros, I'm going to give you some cons, I'm going to give you my overall thoughts, and I'm going to give you a score and what I thought of this movie. And with that being said, let's jump right into it. Daredevil archaeologist Indiana Jones races against time to retrieve a legendary dial that can change the course of history. Accompanied by his goddaughter, he soon finds himself squaring off against Dr. Voller, a former Nazi who works for NASA. That was probably the most non-spoiler review that I can find, because I feel like the other descriptions just really give a lot of the movie away, so I was like, I gotta find something that's kind of non-spoilery. But that was the synopsis that I went with, and I have to say there was a couple of things working with the movie and a couple of things working against the movie. Number one, I think the only really big thing working with it was James Mangold. He is a wonderful director. 4 films off the hop, if you have not seen them, that I think are absolute masterpieces. 310 to Yuma, Walk the Line, Ford v Ferrari, and I'm sure we all saw this one, Logan, which is one of the best superhero movies ever made. That was probably the most exciting thing, going into this movie. This is the first film not directed by Steven Spielberg, which is pretty interesting. But there's more concerns than there was hopefulness for this movie. Obviously, this is the first Indiana Jones film that is, ever since Disney bought Lucasfilm, this is their first film that they've done, and I'm not trying to compare, but I have not been a big fan of the Star Wars movies that have come out of Lucasfilm ever since Disney has bought it. I enjoyed Rogue One quite a bit, but other than that, I was like, I'm a little disappointed. And then you hear all of the negativity. They brought this movie to the Cannes Film Festival, and the reviews were horrible. People are saying this movie is terrible. The reviews have gone up, and it seems like the general audience seems to really like it. So after seeing it, me being a huge Indiana Jones fan, I love the original 3 movies. Kind of hit or miss on Crystal Skull. It's really fun to make fun of. It's not really that good of a movie. I had high hopes for this one. What did I think of the Dial of Destiny? Oh man, I didn't really like it, dude. Film is obviously very subjective. Like, if you enjoyed the movie, that's completely fine. If you enjoyed Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that's completely fine. But for me personally, with the Dial of Destiny, I was just left a little underwhelmed when I walked out of this movie, but there were some things I definitely liked about it. So again, I'm just gonna give you my just kind of general non-spoiler thoughts on the film, things that kind of stuck out to me. So we'll always start with the pros. And number one, Harrison Ford, man, like he I love this guy, dude. I honestly would just love to shake his hand, dude, just thank you for making all these wonderful movies. And I was a little concerned because, again, obviously he came back for Han Solo in the new Star Wars movies, and I was kind of worried, he's gonna just not care. He's just gonna be like, no, I'm just gonna do whatever I want. It's gonna I thought it'd be hard to kind of tell them apart a little bit, but not at all. He really played up, it really felt like Indiana Jones, and I really liked that. And one thing I really loved about the movie is that they weren't afraid to tie his age in within the story. Obviously Harrison Ford is on the verge of 80 years old in real life, and Indiana Jones is very old in this movie. They're not shying away that he's old. You see him, the first scene that you see him in when he's older, he's literally sleeping in a chair, and he goes up to a door and he tells his kids to turn down the music. I mean, that's what an old person does, and I absolutely found that hilarious. There was a time back in the old movies where he loved to teach archaeology. He was so passionate about it, and it was so cool. In this movie, you can still tell there's that passion, but he's just kind of over it. The students just don't care, so he doesn't really care. And he's literally, as I said, he's on the verge of retirement. So he's like, dude, thank goodness I get to be out of this. So I don't know, parts of that, I really like they played into that part of his age. Now, there are a few sequences in the film where it does have a lot of action sequences where you see him jumping across cars and doing all these other crazy things from there's no way an 80-year-old man could do that. So again, while they played well into his age, there's a few things that's not realistic at all. There's just no way that he can do that at this age. It's just absolutely insane. But overall, Harrison Ford's performance was really, really good. He is Indiana Jones, and even at 80 years old, homeboy still got it. He did absolutely fantastic. fantastic. The other person that I really enjoy in this movie is Mads Mikkelsen. I mean, a lot of people love him. To be honest, I haven't seen him in much stuff. I've seen him in Rogue One. I've seen him in this. I've seen him in the Fantastic Beasts movies. But my favorite performance from him is probably in Death Stranding. That game is phenomenal. I know it's kind of a hit or miss game with people, but his performance in that was terrific. Death Stranding is great. If you had a chance to play it, definitely endure through it because it's really, really good when it comes to the story. I liked him as a villain. I liked him as Dr. Voller, if I'm saying that correctly. I hope I'm saying that right. I like villains that have a motive. Sometimes the motive comes off as cheesy, and this movie definitely, you know, is kind of, has a little bit of a cheese, like, villainy type thing, but he really played it off well. Like, it sounds weird to say out of context, but Homeboy was like born to like play like this Nazi character. Like, I'm like, dang, dude, he is evil, and he has his mind set on one thing. And I do like when a villain feels like they're right, because obviously it makes you think as like the viewer going like, okay, maybe I can see where he's coming from a little bit, but obviously you still side with the hero. So there were parts of that where I felt that from, you know, that character. So I thought Mads Mikkelsen played that off really well. Just absolutely fantastic. He did really, really good. And then my other big pro in this movie is obviously John Williams' score. Like this, the music in this, like no matter how I felt about the movie, no matter how I felt about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the music in this is phenomenal. Like every time the action scenes come up, or it's just like the dun, 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 like the main theme, just absolutely terrific. John Williams, of course, as always, knocked it out of the park. All right, so those are all my pros. Let's jump into the cons that I had with the Dial of Destiny. And I'm not gonna lie to you, there's quite a bit. Unfortunately, with a movie like this, in my opinion, there are more cons than there is pros. Again, I don't think the movie is terrible by any means. I felt really underwhelmed and really disappointed. And I really didn't want to feel that way. I went in so excited. And when the movie started, I was like, I was all on board, man. Like the first 20 minutes were pretty good when it comes to the action side of things, but it just slowed down, and it was just, it just did not work for me as a film. And kind of tying that in to my first con is, number one, this movie is way too long. I always complain about long movies. I prefer my movies to be an hour and like 45 minutes with the credits. And obviously with some movies you just can't do that. Like sometimes you just need a longer runtime to tell your story, and I'm completely fine with that. There's plenty of longer movies out there. I guess the biggest example would be Avengers Endgame, where it held my attention. There's a lot going on. It was exciting. You know, Across the Spider-Verse, that movie was like 2.5 hours. Held my attention the entire time. It did not feel like 2 hours. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, like, it was so long, and the problem with it is that there's too many sequences that just nothing, in my opinion, happens. There's this, dude, my God, there's a scene on a boat where Antonio Banderas is in the movie. Once you see him, just be ready to know that you're going to be on that boat for a long time. There's a segment where they go down like in the water, and like these eels are attacking them. You can't see what's going on, and then like there's so much happening on this boat, but nothing's happening at the same time. That's like the smack dab middle of the movie, and it was so long, and it was just these scenes that there's someone need to like cut, or an editor need to like cut some of this off. So they could have shaved like 20 minutes off this movie, and I think it would have been completely fine. It's really long. Like it's like 2 hours and 34 minutes, and they could have shaved off 20 minutes of that, in my personal opinion. Number two, Helena, Teddy, and Dr. Voller's henchmen are awful. I do not like any of those characters. Helena, I could not just get on board with that character. I found her so irritating, and I know it's not the actress's fault. I know it's not her. I know she's just doing her job, but the character, I never came around to liking her. I was like, dude, you are just irritating me. The writers, I wish they would have gave her more of an arc to make us like her more, because I was like, I really don't like her. And again, I know it's not the actors, I know it's the character I don't like, but man, I was just so turned off by her character, dude. Teddy, who's a little boy in the movie, he's pretty good. They just don't really give him much to do. He's kind of just there for like a little bit of comedic relief. He doesn't really get to do much, so we don't get much of his story. And I'm just like, this movie's 2.5 hours, and we couldn't fit in a story for him. Like other time, like that 20 minutes could have gone to more character development, and there just wasn't a lot of character development with like Teddy. I just thought he could have used a little bit more. And then Dr. Voller's character, Matt Mikkelsen's henchmen, literally felt like CPUs from a video game. You got the big chunky guy, you got the one guy who never listens, and it's just, they're so generic, and they just pop up out of nowhere whenever the story is convenient for them. And I'm just like, this is bad storytelling, and these henchmen literally have no character development whatsoever. I know they aren't the main focus, but they were just like, as just literally CPUs in a game. And I was like, dude, this is just too much for me. I would have to say as well, a lot of people were talking about this. I gotta be honest, the de-aging on Harrison Ford was really distracting. Now, when it first happened in the first part of the movie, it's in the trailer, it looked pretty good for a second. But the minute he started talking, the minute he started moving, it just felt like, you know, the computer that programs, the computer's like a perfectionist, you know, and it's like the computer's gonna get everything perfect. It just felt so soulless and lifeless, and it really took me out of the movie. While again, the beginning action scene when he was younger, that was really cool. The whole train sequence, like, that was really cool. It just felt so awkward because he would just go like this. I'm Indiana Jones. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was just so lifeless. It reminded me of like The Lion King, where those animals have no expressions on their face. And it just, it looked good. And I will say this is the best it's ever looked at a film. But it still has a long way to go. It felt too perfect, but which made it look really fake. So that was a real problem with me as well. And then, obviously, this is a non-spoiler review, so I'm not going to give away the ending. But the minute they do something with the dial, some stuff happens, and the movie ends in a way that you are so... They do something with the dial, and some events happen, and you're like, I don't like this. I personally was not on board with this movie. It's not as bad as Crystal Skull, but I was not on board with what they did. And then the movie just kind of ends. And you're just like, there's no way this could be the end. Like, it feels like there's another movie coming, but this is the last movie. They confirmed this is it. Harrison Ford's not doing it anymore. Dude, it was such a weird... The last, like, 25 minutes of this movie was like some kind of fever dream. Like, I feel like I legally just went like blind, going like, what am I looking at on the screen, dude? And it just didn't work for me. It did not work at all. The ending of this movie is just so silly, and it just does not work. And that's when I said to myself, I really don't like this movie. I don't like this movie. I mean, there's parts of it that I like, but overall, I was so disappointed in this movie. The real question everybody's asking, is this movie better than King of the Crystal Skull? My answer would be yes, but that's not saying much. It's like the I took last night was better than the I took this morning. It's kind of one of those situations where it's like, yeah, it's better, but it wasn't really necessary. I left this movie going like, okay, there's some pretty cool action sequences in the film. Like, again, the beginning was pretty cool, like with the Nazi train. There's a couple of car chase sequences that were really cool, and like the overall adventure, them like going on the adventure to do stuff with the dial, I thought was fairly intriguing for what it was. But again, like, I will probably never watch this movie again. This does not feel like a proper send-off for Indiana Jones. It feels like this is like, okay, we'll be back in a few years to make the sixth one, and it's never going to happen. The end is just so bizarre that you're like, I can't believe this is how they ended the film. And I don't know. I just felt really underwhelmed with this movie. Would I recommend it to people? If you're a big Indiana Jones fan and you want to get the sour taste of your mouth out of your mouth from King of the Crystal Skull, sure, watch it once when it comes on Disney Plus, because in my personal opinion, this was not a proper send-off for Indiana Jones. I mean, the original three, it ended perfectly. I think this is a good example of like, just leave a franchise like this alone. Kind of like with Space Jam, where it's like they just had to make another one. They're like, we have to do this. Like, no, you don't. You don't need to do another one. And so for me personally, there are parts of it that I enjoyed. Harrison Ford is so good as Indiana Jones. It was great to see him again. It was so good to see him back in this character. I really enjoyed that aspect. I just wish that this character was in a different movie. I'm going to give Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny a 6 out of 10. Like, again, I kind of agree with the critics on this one, where it's kind of at that 68%, and I'm right there with them. I give it a 6 out of 10. Like, I'm happy I saw it. I was stoked to see it, but at the end of the day, I will probably never, ever watch this movie again. Alright my friends, so again, that was my non-spoiler review for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Again, whether you loved the film or you hated the film, let me know your comments down below. I love to get a back and forth conversation started with you guys here in regards to this movie. I saw a whole bunch of different age gaps in this movie. I saw people that were probably saw Raiders of the Lost Ark in theaters that are a little bit like as old as Harrison Ford, and I saw kids probably as young as like 11 years old in that film, probably their first Indiana Jones experience ever. And so again, like, this movie is going to hit a lot of people in different ways. So again, let me know your thoughts down below of this movie. And if you do like the content that you see, if you could please hit the subscribe button, the like button, and share the video with your friends. It does help the YouTube algorithm in finding my videos, and it does help me as a YouTube creator. So thank you to everybody who does do that. It means the absolute world. But again, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you all so much for watching this video at Chandler Burton Movies and Video Games. Until next time, I hope you all take care.